America Decides. The 8th episode of the final season of Succession is to me without doubt one of the very best episodes in the entire series, and one of my favorite episodes of television in recent memory. It is wrought with pulsating tension, extremely significant character moments for each prominent member of the cast, terrific conflicting motivations for each of the siblings, immense drama and tragedy, and a thick atmosphere throughout. But arguably the most significant moment within it occurs in the absence of a lot of that. During a tiny moment of respite, as brother and sister share one of the most heartfelt conversations that has ever taken place in the series. From one side at least. Here, Kendall works through a lot of the things on his mind that plague his thoughts and decisions during such a precarious night, and ultimately lands on the topic of his fatherhood, where he says something that is as indicative of the story as a whole as anything.
I don't think I'm a very good father.
You are. You're okay. You've tried. That's all we can do.
Maybe the poison drips through.
No.
There are so many elements and facets that can be applied to this scene, and to the final line specifically, but first and foremost, there are some really important things that it reveals about Kendall himself, as he finally verbalizes some of the things that have been boiling up inside him. He strips his insecurities bare rather than burying them under substance abuse, parties, and walls of desperation and coping. The entire episode has Kendall feeling very conflicted and internalizing a lot while being concerned over several things that are going on with Roman. And I feel like he finally had to properly let it out to someone he, tragically, trusted. It's a pretty gigantic moment for him in that way. And additionally, it's pretty big for Shiv to have stated outright that maybe he isn't entirely wrong for thinking that he isn't a good father. His inability to be there for his kids is made a constant dark joke throughout the story, but him absorbing the reality of his ineptitude here is very sobering. And while it is also indicative of her ironic honesty in this moment, I think that Shiv does him a kindness by not sugarcoating it much. And not only does her line here lead into the primary point, but it's incredibly important itself.
You've tried. That's all we can do.
It's this theme of embedded, cyclical abuse and trauma. The Roys had this horrific, abusive, manipulative, dictatorial, and torrential upbringing where they conflated value with cynicism and love with crushing competition, and it broke them in such different yet overlapping and equally serious ways. None of these kids want to be this way. None of them want to be pathologically inept at fundamental aspects of what it means to be human. They want to live and love and nurture and be nurtured. And if they had their way, I'm sure they would not be a product of the negatives of their upbringing in this way, while maintaining the sparse positives that they took from their childhoods, the tiny glimmers of light. The Roys try with all their might to live how they want to live, and that is all they can do. I don't think they want to be horrible people. And yet, maybe the poison drips through. Maybe these shackles are not so easy to break. And maybe we are inescapably a product of our upbringing. Pain begets pain, and it wields the weapons used against it in the first place to harness what scared it and bring it under its control. It's why those who are abused abuse others, to fill that void and make the world feel that little bit less miserable and lonely and hopeless. But it's never sustainable, and it just makes you crave more. Maybe the poison drips through. The Roy kids have guarded themselves and lied to all about the idea that they have been forever tainted, but this idea from Kendall is such an honesty and inevitability that has not been verbalized much at all. We could tell that the poison dripped through in episode 1, but it's one thing for a detached onlooker to see it, and an entirely different one for those being poisoned to see reality for what it is. It is an indication of Kendall's growth, and it's notable to see that Shiv shuts it down immediately, partly because she cares for her brother, I'm sure, but also because I'm sure she'd rather not come to terms with the idea that if he is poisoned, she is too. And this episode itself is proof of this idea in a nutshell, of how these children are undeniably shaped by their father. It's all here in America Decides. Roman being scarily dictatorial, self-serving, ruthless, nasty, and cruel in ways very reminiscent of Logan. Shiv luring Greg and threatening him in a very Logan-esque way, though without the substance or recourse that would have made said threat legitimate. And Kendall, despite his fears becoming an absent father, and even mocking Shiv in the way that Logan tended to at times.
Well, no, because you need a supermajority in the holding company.
Because I mean, there's supermajority in there, but you mean...
No.
I fucking asked you some real questions, Shiv. I wondered why you looked like a goose trying to shit a house brick, you piece of dirt.
No matter how you may try to avoid this sort of thing, you are a product of your upbringing and environment. And if that environment is toxic, maybe the poison drips through. It's hard to come to terms with, but doing so is essential for facing reality head-on and having any sort of semblance of hope for the future. But the other thing that this line from Kendall indicates and brings to the fore is something that the kids at times have been hesitant or unwilling to say as plainly as this: that Logan was a poison. They have talked in the past of how cruel he was, how abusive, how they could never forgive him. But something about this hit different. This wasn't an emotionally charged, heated argument or a justified confrontation where our deepest feelings can easily slip out. This was a quiet moment stood still in the eye of a storm after the man had passed on, where both children acknowledged that Logan was poison. This man they loved, when it came down to it, was an awful person. And in the stillness here, they acknowledge it in a way that they had never quite done before.
I love you, Dad. I do, I love you, okay?
I don't know.
I can't forgive you.
And yet, Logan has stated and implied throughout the series that the reason he treats those he loves the way he does is because that is what he conflates with compassion and care. Because that is how he grew up. The poison dripped through, and I think there's a sad element to Logan's final days as he realizes that said poison has caused him to scare off the children that he does genuinely love. He spends the first couple of episodes of Season 4 in this malaise, questioning the world, his life, and existence, and most of all, just so clearly missing his children, maybe showing a hint of regret at the way it all went down. I don't think he would have taken back the vast majority of things he's done, because he's Logan Roy, but the man clearly isn't truly happy seeing where his toxicity has led him, and he died defined by those cold priorities, surrounded by corporate bootlickers and yes-men, avoiding his son's wedding, with no loved ones around him. Logan was defined by his poison. The question is, will his children be? I think that Succession argues that there are inexorable elements of us as human beings that tie back to our experiences, ones that leave fundamental marks on us. That much is certain. But what is as of yet unclear is if those marks left on us are destined to define us. We can try and try and try, and the poison may drip through, but can we strive forward in spite of it? Will Shiv? Will Kendall? Will Roman? That is the question that keeps them up at night, and that is the question that I feel this series will have an answer to by its end. And the answer it provides will have an unbelievable tonal knock-on effect on the rest of the story. Many thanks for watching.